Please introduce yourself, your company, and your career progression journey.
So I'm Alex Mitchell. I'm the Asia Pacific General Counsel of Unisys. I'm based in Sydney here. I'm also the Company Secretary for Unisys' Australian subsidiaries. And as part of my role, I also hold a bit of a function with our compliance department, doing ethics and compliance work in Australia. Unisys Australia, it's a subsidiary of Unisys Corporation, which is an American company. It provides secure digital products and services for government and private sector clients. Unisys Corporation is a global IT company. It's located in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. It is listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Unisys actually provides multi-cloud solutions, including cybersecurity, digital government, core and retail banking, as well as travel and transportation. The aim basically is to transform and manage clients' applications, data, networks and devices. My role involves providing both strategic and operational support for Unisys' business across its 10 Asia Pacific countries. Some of these 10 countries include Australia, New Zealand, very close to where we are, but we go all the way up to Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, China, even Japan and the Philippines. In addition, we also provide legal support for other countries where Unisys doesn't have a subsidiary but has partnering arrangements, for example, Thailand. I have to say I'm very, very blessed and fortunate to have an excellent team. We're a small team, but a very effective team. So I have two senior lawyers, both women, one based in Taiwan, one based in Sydney. I also have another paralegal based in Sydney and one company secretary and paralegal based in India.
Where did you start your legal career?
So I guess I started my legal career back in university days. I was an undergrad arts law student. At the time, I had no legal connections at all in the industry, but I was very, very keen to make an early start. I think my first role was probably after sending hundreds of application letters, I managed to get a job with a mid-tier city law firm. And from then it kind of developed, I guess. I found other jobs writing head notes for a publication called the Immigration Review Tribunal Digest. I also got another part-time job as a research assistant to one of the professors of law at the University of New South Wales where I was studying, researching refugee law.
And how did your goals shift in different stages of your career?
Well, I suppose the first goal I had was to get a job as a solicitor. Then back in those days when I graduated, it was really, really tough and competitive. So I was desperate to get a job as a solicitor, and I wanted a job with an international focus. And so the first job I got was actually with a very small mid-tier Sydney firm, which was doing transport insurance litigation work. I guess I'd always been interested in IT, being a growth industry. And so I managed to, I ran into actually a former lawyer that I used to work for at the Crown Solicitor's Office, who had then become a partner in a mid-tier city law firm with an IT practice. And so I managed to get a job there. It was my first IT job and did largely procurement work for New South Wales Government. So this was an interesting time actually to be an IT lawyer because it was around the time of the Y2K crisis, also the era of the dot-com boom and also the advent of 3G mobile. So shortly thereafterwards, my next goal I guess was to try and differentiate myself a bit from the many, many lawyers that were also finding their way into that industry. I thought maybe the best way to do that would be to do a Masters of Law. So I straight away got permission to do a Masters of Law at the University of New South Wales as well. And it was majoring in information, telecommunications and technology law. After I'd worked at that firm for a few years, I really wanted to get into an international firm. I saw myself eventually going overseas to work as an IT lawyer. So at the time I interviewed with a few firms in the UK actually, as well as in Sydney, and ended up accepting an offer from Baker & McKenzie, and I joined their IT practice group. Yeah, so while I was at Baker's, I managed to finish my Masters of Law and specialised in information, technology, telecommunications and media law. So my wife and I, we flew out to London actually with Baker & McKenzie. They had at the time a program called the ATP program, which is the Associate Training Program. It's a great opportunity where they send lawyers to any country in the world pretty much for anything between 6 months and 18 months to work. And so my wife and I, we flew out to London just after the 9/11 bombings actually. It was an interesting time because the aircraft was completely empty, and we arrived in London just after that, and I started work in their London office. Once we got to London, my wife and I realised we loved working there, we wanted to stay, so towards the end of that 18 month secondment, I did what's called the Qualified Lawyers Transfer Test, which is effectively a way of re-qualifying as a UK lawyer and becoming admitted to work in London as a solicitor of England and Wales. It's very, very lucky. I mean, in London, the firm had clients all over Europe basically, so I spent a lot of time actually travelling all around the UK. Got to Ireland a couple of times on deals. Also spent some time in Saudi Arabia of all places working in the desert. on a large telecommunications project for about 6 months, which was a real experience. I spent about 5 years in the UK. At the time, my wife and I, we had twins. Having no relatives at all in London, it was very, very tough to bring them up there. So we decided to come back to Australia to live again. And so at the time, I wanted to get a good role again with a big firm. Interviewed with a few firms and ended up accepting a job with Freehills, as it was known then, now Herbert Smith Freehills. Got a job there as a senior associate working in their growing IT practice. So I worked at Freehills for 3 years. It was a great firm. While I was there though, I got approval to start an MBA. So I'd got my Masters of Law, but I was very, very interested more as a senior lawyer in how business worked and how to understand clients' businesses, especially at Freehills. And as partway through the MBA, I was very, very interested in trying to apply my MBA learnings to a technology company. At the time, I was in touch with a former colleague from Baker & McKenzie in London who had returned to Australia, and he had actually got a position as General Counsel of Australia and New Zealand at Unisys, my current company. And we got talking, he offered me a role there, and so I left Freehills and became a senior lawyer working for Australia and New Zealand at Unisys.
So what ultimately drew you from private practice to Unisys?
For me, I wanted to understand the relationship between business and technology. And Unisys being the company it is, it seemed to me to be the perfect opportunity to move into a role where you work closely with the business, you understand the company's strategy, products, solutions, and you're able to apply legal skills to that to assist them.
What were your key takeaways from the MBA?
For me, I guess the most valuable learnings from the MBA was, understanding holistically how a business operates. I think the MBA taught us the relationships between leadership, strategy, elements of culture, people, systems, and it gives you the ability to have a holistic view of a company. And you also realise, I think, doing an MBA that successful companies are that way because of alignment. It's very, very, very important to actually make sure that all of those elements are aligned and that they're following one direction and it's a clear direction for the company to succeed. Yeah, in fact, I apply this sort of skill from my MBA in my role on a daily basis.
If you could turn back time, what piece of advice would you give yourself when you were considering an in-house role?
If I was going to give myself some advice back then, that advice, would be, do as much research as you possibly can on a company. Do a thorough research on the company. Look into, its market, its position, its aims, its strategy. Where does it see itself being? How is it growing? And then, try and match that with your own sense of what you want. So, is the role something that will give you growth? Is the culture right for you? Does the ethics of the company resonate with your own values and so forth? So again, I think it's all about alignment, right? So it's trying to align where you see the company going with where you see your own career is going.